So I will quickly get into my talk. So we, like Guha mentioned, we basically study two species. One is honeybees, solitary bees, and so on. And the other organism of interest, though we are partial towards the honeybees, is the social spider. So and the link between these two is, one is their sociality, the sociality angle, and the other interaction between these two is that we often, after having tested the honeybees, will feed them to the spiders. So with that, let me get into my talk by acknowledging all the contributors. So the work that I'm going to be talking about today was not the work of a single student or a PhD project. It has actually evolved quite a bit over time, over the last couple of years. So Aditya was a postdoc who worked on this project for some period of time. Anumit was an undergraduate student. Bhupendra and Rohit were MTech students at the Indian Institute of Science. Tejasvi was again a bachelor's master's student at IISER Trivandrum, and Vidula was a research fellow working with us. And the us is basically Debraj Ghosh, who is a civil engineer, and so is Tejas Murthy, also a civil engineer, and Divya, who's in the audience and has a talk later on today, also on social spiders. So, and of course, we acknowledge funding from the co-research grant of the National Research Foundation in order to be able to complete this work. Now, we heard a wonderful talk on the evolution of sociality and in this morning from Trine, and so therefore that spares me a few minutes. So I will basically, just as a brief reminder, tell you a little bit that we know about social spider behavior and what their populations look like. So they're extremely rare, okay? It's like evolved 20 odd times. If you look at spiders, there are about 20 odd species that are social to various degrees. And they live in highly inbred colonies. And as Trine was mentioning in the morning, they live in very small, discontinuous populations. And she has nicely, beautifully told us why that might be the case. And it's also a fact that dispersal, we think, is quite limited in social spiders. And of course, they're very different from honeybee societies. For example, yes, they do live in female-biased colonies, but there are no strict morphological castes, unlike in apis or in honeybees. And most individuals seem to be capable of doing most things. Yeah, so, but we do see some rudimentary forms or some elements of task partitioning, for example, in who gets to reproduce, brood care, and so on. But when it comes to other kinds of collective behavior, whether it be webbing or whether it be collectively capturing prey, it appears that most individuals are capable, or all individuals are capable of performing these tasks. So today I'm going to be talking about, not so much about the behavior, but about the web itself, and how, trying to ask this question as to whether the web of social spiders is actually a conducive surface for the transmission of vibrations, and how does that affect hunting strategies or collective behaviors when it comes to prey capture. So you can see here that this is the collectively hunting spiders, a group of them. They're all colorfully labeled because, as Trine was mentioning, someone asked her in the morning, that's the only way that we are able to identify individuals. And there you can see a bunch of spiders on a prey species. And in the middle, you can see spiders that are, producing silk in order to make a web, to construct a web. And there's also some allomaternal care. Now, some of the benefits, and these remain mainly hypotheses or purported benefits, I should say, has been that there is, by the evolution of sociality, there is, silk conservation, which basically means that individuals have to invest lesser amount in silk if they live in large groups. The other hypothesis has been that larger groups can capture larger prey, more prey, the webs can cover a larger surface area, and so therefore it makes it efficient. And there is also the other benefit, of course, is cooperative brood care. Now, all of these, primarily till now, we are not very sure about whether this happens or not. The thing about social spider webs is that it's a very complex structure, and the architecture of the webs must support the weight of several spiders. So that's a precondition when you compare with, say, solitary spider webs of different kinds, like, for example, the orb webs and so on. And the webs must also capture enough prey to feed the entire colony. So therefore, this forms a basis for the evolution of certain collective behaviors which are yet to be fully understood. So if you look at the webs of social spiders, and this is one species which Trina introduced in the morning, this is the Stegotyphus serracinorum, and you can see that the webs in nature occur on vegetation. Very often they envelop entire plants, and they also occur on man-made structures like the fence over here, where the webs actually tend to be quite two-dimensional, and so therefore this is convenient in order to study, if you're interested in how the web transmits vibrations and so on. The fence model, the two-dimensional model, is a starting point, because the other web is just way too complex. So this is a small movie, and maybe it will play. Yeah. So you can see that this is a web, and you can see the sheet web, and on top what you see is a retreat, and a retreat is a nest where the spiders reside. They stay there in order to avoid desiccation stress and all of that, and they come out when they sense vibrations on the web. Yeah, and you can see that there is a cricket there, and there are spiders that are approaching the prey. And very often you will see that, in a couple of seconds you will see that the spiders are all on the prey. So it's a very, very quick kind of a behavior, and it elicits an immediate response from the group. So you can see that, the prey, of course, these are sit and wait predators. The arrival of prey is very unpredictable, and so therefore they have to sort of be ready, and so therefore they have to respond very quickly the minute prey is trapped on the web or intercepted, because otherwise there is a danger that the prey escapes, and the web is also damaged, which then subsequently needs to be repaired, which also imposes a cost. So what we did is we took these nice two-dimensional webs, and we brought the colonies back into the lab. And in the lab, we had them grow on two-dimensional frames. So we keep the retreat in the corner. It's a little paper nest or a paper pocket. You can see that in the top corner there in one side. And over time, you allow the spiders to build the web, and this is what you end up with. So here is an experimental setup where you have the 2D frames that are hanging from the ceiling, and the spiders, you can see there the retreat in the left top corner, and you can see that they have covered over time, over a few days, they will sort of build their webs, which we can then study. So we did this using these 2D frames, which are about 16 to 60 centimeters, and allowed web building to happen over 7 days. And then we worked with experimental colonies of 5, 10, 25, and the single spiders were also, which we brought from the field, were like a control. So here is what it looks like when you look at the spatiotemporal progression of webs. You can see that you have, with group size, you can see that, say for example, by day 5, if you look at it, the 15 and the 10 and the 25 group spiders have nicely built quite an extensive web that kind of covers the surface of the frame. So what we do is that we take these high resolution images, and then we skeletonize these images using image processing techniques, and then we try to look at various web parameters. So what are the web parameters? We looked at coordination number, and a coordination number is nothing but it's a term which gives you an idea about the structural stability of a physical surface, or in this case the web. And it also tells you that it also reveals things, the values of the coordination number reveals things about the trade-off between how much of structural stability is required and the amount of material that has to be used. So therefore, we calculated the coordination number from these images. We also looked at the pore size, which is essentially the mesh size. We looked at the density of silk, the length of silk that was produced, And then from that we could calculate the per capita silk investment. Okay. Now the thing here is that I say per capita silk investment because we just looked at the total length of silk and divided it by the number of spiders in the colony, simply because it was really difficult for us to actually see each individual spider, how much silk are you producing and things like that. So therefore we took a per capita investment. Now here is what it looks like. When you look at the coordination number, you can see that irrespective of the group size, it hovers around the region of 3, right? So basically all group sizes achieve kind of similar coordination numbers. Now if you compare this, and this is probably it is the first time that it is done with social spiders, if you compare it with other kinds of spider webs, you can see that, if you look at cobwebs, they have much higher coordination number, and cobwebs are much more complex webs, and so therefore perhaps, there is, the structural stability is very high. And then if you're on the lower end, if you look at the trapdoor spider webs, they tend to have very low coordination numbers, and our sheet webs come somewhere in the middle. So then we looked at the total amount of silk that was produced, and this is not a very surprising result because it just tells you that the more the number of spiders in the colony, the more silk that is going to be produced, right? When we looked at all the parameters, that is, which I was telling you about, coordination number, pore size, per capita silk investment and length of silk, we only found a significant relationship for the length of silk with colony size. So basically, when we looked at the per capita silk investment, at least with the experimental group sizes that we worked with, we did not find that there was that larger groups saved more silk, right? So they tended across group sizes, they tend to have similar investment in silk, but I told you that, as I mentioned before, that the caveat is that we don't know how much each individual spider was silking. So basically, this part of the work I will summarize by saying that we did not find per capita in saving in silk investment. The web geometric properties were also very similar across group sizes, and unlike other kinds of animal constructions, right, which has to be ready, right, before it can be used, social spider webs are actually good to go because the minute they start building it, they can start using it almost, instantaneously. And this, in my opinion, is very beneficial for this kind of a predator that has to rely on uncertain prey interception events. So next we looked at two questions. One is to look at whether the webs facilitate the transfer of vibratory information with minimum distortion, and next, do the spiders actually coordinate their responses during hunting? So orb webs, as you know, are very well studied from these two aspects, but not the social spider webs. So we used 3 approaches. The first is to use actual prey capture experiments where we used real prey, or we used a vibrating actuator, which was actually home built at APU by a physics faculty. So this actuator can actually, produce vibrations or a range of vibrations, which we then, with using that, we could do a number of controlled experiments. We also used finite element analysis, which I will tell you a little bit more in a moment what it does. And we also then, based on our experimental data, we also performed simulations of collective prey capture. So this is a sequence from our experiments of social spiders. You can see the spiders responding to a bee that is trapped there in the bottom, and you can see them coming down. You can see that there are individuals that very swiftly come to attack. There are others that join later. And you can see that, they seem to be coming from different parts of the retreat. So perhaps they are individually sensing the vibrations. So, and then finally, maybe there is we do see that, as I will tell you in a moment, that there is some sort of coordination between these individuals in the later stages of prey capture. So let me move from here as soon as the spiders all huddle up on the prey. You can see that there is this kind of encircling behavior where some of them actually go down south and then come up and attack the prey. So this is a form of behavior which we see where they are trying to surround the prey. And these are experiments with the actuator where we mimic these. We were able to do these experiments. I mean, we did these experiments because it gave us good control, experimental control. Oops. What happened? Okay, I don't know what happened, but let me not waste time. So you can see that that's the actuator, and you can see a toothpick sticking out, and the toothpick touches the web surface, and that's what delivers the vibrations. And we can tune this actuator to vibrate at different frequencies. Yeah, and then look at the spiders will come out of the web. Unfortunately, you can't see that part, but they come out of the web and they touch till they actually touch the toothpick. They are responding just like they would respond to honeybees and so on. So here is what those actuator experiments tell us. So you can see that we worked with 3 different group sizes. So 5, colony of 5, 15 and 25. And we used vibrational frequencies of 50, 250 and 700. And what this graph, though it looks like a very crowded graph with lots of bubbles in it, what we can see is that most of the responses are towards the 250 hertz frequency. And interestingly, the 700 hertz frequency almost just once, only one spider sort of responded to it. And 250 is somewhere in the middle, but you can see that most of the graph is populated by responses of spiders to 250 hertz. Now, this is the part where we did the finite element analysis. So you can see the 2-dimensional nest in nature. So we got these to grow in the lab, and then we created the skeletonized image, as I mentioned to you earlier. And then what we do in finite element analysis is that it's a computational method where you can look at any physical surface and try to quantify, or you can try to look at the response of that surface to external forces. It may be temperature or it may be pressure and so on. So in this case, our surface was the web. And basically in finite element, and this is something that routinely civil engineers and structural engineers do, so it's a very, very elementary kind of a model. So what they do is that they skeletonize the web and then look at a segment. So as you can see in the diagram here, where you pull out this segment and then you try to look at the properties of this segment. So you have the element which is a strand of your silk, and then you have it connected by 2 nodes. And these 2 nodes can actually move or respond to vibrations along the translational and the rotational planes. So that is what deforms the web when a prey intercepts the web, and the web moves and so on. So computationally, what we did is that we applied a very, very tiny force, because this is like prey interception events. And the way we applied it is there is a syllable and then there is a quiet zone where there is no signal, and then this continues, because very often the prey are not continuously vibrating on the web, right? They vibrate, they move their legs and wings or whatever, and then they stop and then they continue. So this kind of mimics that. Now what we can see here is that this temporal signature of the force that is applied is very well preserved across regions of the web. So the force is applied here, this mimics the prey location, and at these 3 locations, one close to the prey somewhere midway and towards the retreat, in all these 3 locations you can see that the vibrations are, there is no distortion in information, and the vibrations reach everywhere across the surface of the web. So we did many runs of these experiments, and we tried, playing around with different frequencies, as you can see over here, from about 100 to about 1200. Yes, okay. So 1200, and the message here is that no matter where you apply the force, mimicking the prey, and what the colony sizes are, which determines the, the density of your web, you get a similar kind of a decay in terms of the signal, yeah, and that it's propagates very well. So I don't need to go through the slide because I told you what the message is. So finally, we looked at the next stage, which is we looked at how do the spiders actually, once they are on the prey, then how do they actually, distribute themselves and perform tasks. So I will skip through this model because we also modeled this whole thing, and I will take you to this this experiment. So here what we do is when the spiders are on the prey, then we looked at the behavior of individuals, okay, where do they go, whether they catch hold of the wings or the legs or the antennae and so on, or the abdomen or the head, the thorax and so on. So interestingly, what we found is that early during the capture, you can see here that most of the spiders will actually attack the extremities. By extremities, we mean legs, wings and antennae. So there are spiders which are like kind of holding the legs, the antennae, and so that's what those are the moving parts of a prey, and so therefore in order to immobilize, maybe it makes sense to do that first. And over time you can see that the core body parts begin to be held more. So then they attack the abdomen and the head and the thorax. So you can see this nice inversion there, right, this X mark. Now, interestingly, we also see another behavior. When all this is going on, there is a small number of spiders that don't participate in webbing, but instead what they do is they are near the vicinity of the prey, and they are quickly, in real time, damaging the, repairing the damage, okay, because the struggles of the prey induces damage, but there are these guys that actually try to, sort of repair the webs. So this is my final slide. So what did we find throughout this project is that the webs are ready to use from start, unlike the orb webs and other animal architecture. We found no support within our experimental framework for the self-conservation hypothesis. We found that prey-induced vibrations will propagate with minimum distortion and elicits a rapid response from the spiders. And after the prey is seized, we find that the spiders act in a coordinated manner by approaching and encircling the prey. And they also, you can see a lot of coordination in terms of the activities of the spider and there is some sort of a task partitioning that goes on. I don't mean to say that there are leg pullers and the wing seizers, that's not the case, but it's just that they spread or they distribute the effort of capturing the prey between individuals, and there is a temporal sequence in this. So thank you very much, and these are the four collaborators. We had a lot of fun doing this project. So the two engineers are in the foreground and the two biologists are in the background, and we do find excuses to go to locations like this to discuss spiders. Thank you.
We have time for one question. Yeah. No, sorry.
Hema.
Yeah.
So I didn't fail to notice that the 250 hertz signal is very close to what flies typically flap at.
That's true.
Are they going just by that, or are they also looking at visual?
Yes. So 250 is very close to honeybees, right? And it's also close to flies. Some flies tend to be higher. It's very tempting to say that that's what they are responding to, because very often you find bees, flies and all of these things caught on the webs. But I'm not really sure whether that is or whether there's something else. Why this 250 is a preferred frequency, I really don't know. But the question about using visual cues, it's very likely that they use visual cues in the near field responses. Maybe not in the far field responses, because they are sitting in the retreat, all of that, and they're primarily and mostly only responding to vibration at that early stage of the hunting. But definitely, I think, in the near field, when they are attacking and stuff, to know where to go to, sort of circle around and then pull a leg, or maybe they are also looking at, there's also visual cues involved. Yeah.